You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can
Ever
and
watched
will
a
be used
system
against
fail
you
in
in a
real
court of
time
law.
because someone trusted a bad
I
input
understand my rights.
and then saw one phone call reboot the whole thing? That's what this morning was, and it starts with a pair of handcuffs clicking for all the wrong reasons. The metal snapped around Samantha Brooks's wrist with a sound that was sharp enough to cut through the noise of the federal courthouse plaza, and Officer Tyler Mitchell pressed her forward against the hood of his patrol car like he was locking down a threat, not stopping a professional in the middle of an operation. Her navy blazer wrinkled under his grip, the kind of blazer you buy once you've earned your place in rooms that don't hand out respect easily, and the morning crowd was already gathering. Phones up, lenses pointed, everybody sensing that this wasn't just another routine stop. "You're under arrest for suspicious activity, Akum," Tyler announced loud enough for half the block to hear, voice full of the confidence that comes when you think you've solved the puzzle before you've even read the manual. Sergeant David Coleman stepped in behind him, tactical vest gleaming in the Atlanta sun, chin lifted like this was a textbook takedown. "Turn around, hands behind your back." Now to them, Samantha's designer clothes and calm posture meant nothing. In their minds, those were just variables that didn't match their mental model. And when a model is built on bias, everything that doesn't fit becomes evidence of guilt. They saw a black woman in professional attire, carrying herself like she belonged near federal property, and the system in their heads auto-labeled her danger. What they didn't see was a federal credential tucked inside that blazer, and what they didn't know was that the only reason Samantha was there at all was because a 3-month FBI financial crimes investigation had converged on this exact moment. 15 minutes earlier, Samantha had stepped out of Starbucks with the kind of controlled urgency that comes from years of federal work. Sharp movement, clean sight lines, purpose in every step. Inside the coffee shop, a suspect in a long-running money laundering case sat at the third table from the window, sipping a latte like nothing in his world was about to crack open. Around him, federal surveillance was layered the way good engineering stacks redundancy. Eyes on entrances, eyes on exits. Comms synced, contingency plans mapped. Samantha's secure phone buzzed with encrypted updates as she positioned herself between the coffee shop and the courthouse plaza so she could see both without being seen. She wasn't loitering, she was staging. She wasn't nervous, she was monitoring. But in a patrol car across the street, Tyler Mitchell and Officer Jason Parker stared at her like they'd just spotted a glitch in the city's normal operating pattern. Tyler, blonde hair catching the morning light, leaned forward with the kind of suspicion that doesn't come from evidence so much as imagination, plus a little adrenaline. "Expensive clothes, keeps checking her surroundings," he muttered to Jason, whose hand drifted toward his radio. "That's not normal pedestrian behavior." Jason nodded, eyes tracking Samantha's phone and her positioning like they were looking at a suspect casing a bank instead of an agent running surveillance. When dispatch crackled in with an anonymous tip, possible suspicious individuals casing federal property, Tyler's assumptions crystallized into certainty. The description was vague, almost laughably so lone black woman, professional attire, possible coordination with unknown associates. But vague inputs are dangerous when you already want a certain output. It matched what they thought they were seeing, and that was enough. Samantha's secure line rang again, and she turned slightly away from the street for operational security, voice low and clipped the way federal teams communicate when timing matters. "Brooks here." To Tyler and Jason, it looked like covert coordination. "She's making calls," Tyler said already in that confident headspace where the dots connect themselves. "Definitely coordinating something. Look how she positions herself. Good sight lines, escape routes. That's criminal behavior 101. The irony is brutal for anyone who understands systems. The professional skills that made Samantha effective at her job, situational awareness, controlled movement, careful comms, were being misread as criminal intent by people who didn't understand the actual specs she was working under. Tyler keyed his mic. "Unit 47 to dispatch. We have eyes on the subject from the anonymous tip. Moving to investigate." Sergeant Coleman responded that he was 2 blocks out for backup. Samantha stayed focused on her tactical feed, verifying team locations, confirming the suspect's pattern. She'd trained for hostile interrogations, active shooters, surveillance breakdowns, and a dozen other scenarios, but being profiled by local law enforcement while on duty had never shown up in any FBI field manual. Still, she heard the approaching footsteps register in her periphery, Federal agents learn early that most noise is just noise. You don't break concentration for every distraction. She had no way of knowing that her continued phone conversation was being interpreted as defiance. "Excuse me, miss," Tyler called out, voice carrying that authority that expects compliance before context. "We need to talk to you." Samantha ended her encrypted call with a quick tap, turned calmly, and met Tyler's gaze with the steady assessment of someone who has dealt with all kinds of law enforcement in joint operations. "Good morning, officers. How can I help you?" She wasn't rude. She wasn't submissive. She was professional. But to Tyler and Jason, that calm felt like arrogance, because in their flawed mental model, a good citizen would look scared. "We need to see some identification," Tyler said, tone more command than request. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in this area." Samantha reached into her blazer with deliberate, slow movements and produced her driver's license. She didn't show her federal credentials yet. Operational security is a real thing, and she needed to assess whether these guys were just checking a box or about to blow up a 3-month case on bad assumptions. Tyler studied the license. Prestigious Atlanta address. Clean record. Recent issue. Nothing illegal. But the clean readout didn't reduce suspicion. It made it worse. To a certain kind of mindset, a spotless record just means you're a sophisticated operator. "What brings you to this area this morning?" Jason asked, skepticism sliding into accusation. "You've been standing around making multiple phone calls." Samantha recognized the fishing expedition for what it was, trying to build reasonable suspicion from normal legal behavior because the officers were already committed to a narrative. "Nice phone," Jason said, nodding at her secure device. "Looks expensive. What kind of work do you do?" The question carried that ugly subtext Samantha knew too well. How does a black woman afford what you're holding unless something illegal is going on? She felt irritation rise, but she kept her voice level. "Federal consulting," she said, technically accurate without spilling classified details. Tyler repeated it slowly, like he was tasting a lie. "Federal consulting. Convenient, considering you're hanging around federal property." His tone shifted from inquiry to accusation. "Mind explaining exactly what business you have at the courthouse?" Now Samantha was pinned between two constraints: protect the operation
This is Director
or
Hayes,
protect
FBI.
herself.
That
She
woman
didn't like
is a
either
federal
option.
agent, and I am
"I'm not
ordering you to
required to
release her
discuss my
this
private
instant."
business to satisfy your curiosity," she said firmly, invoking her rights with the precision of someone who has testified in federal court more times than she can count. To any competent officer, that should have been the end of it. To these two, it was gasoline. Jason radioed for backup, describing her as uncooperative and familiar with criminal defense tactics, loud enough that bystanders started slowing down, phones already rising. Samantha saw cameras coming out. She knew what this looked like to the public, and she knew what it was operationally: a growing, public, messy distraction right next to a surveillance target. "Ma'am, you're going to need to be more cooperative," Tyler warned, hand drifting to his belt. "Sergeant Coleman is on his way. We can do this the easy way or the hard way." The threat hung there, heat without light. Samantha's free hand drifted subtly toward her blazer pocket. The credentials were there. The nuclear option, the thing she never wanted to use in public because it would blow operational cover. She still hesitated. Then Sergeant David Coleman rolled up, got out with that slow, heavy authority of a man who thinks he's seen everything. Mid-40s, broad chest, vest tight over 2 decades of habit. "What do we have here?" he asked, voice gravelly. Tyler stepped in fast with a rehearsed report. Anonymous tip, suspicious behavior, professional attire near federal property, possibly coordinating with unknown associates. Coleman's eyes swept Samantha top to bottom, reading her calm like it was a tell instead of competence. "Ma'am, I'm Sergeant Coleman. You've been evasive. I'm giving you one more chance to explain yourself before we escalate." Samantha stayed steady. "Sergeant, I've provided ID and answered your questions. There is no law requiring me to explain legitimate business to satisfy your assumptions." Coleman's face hardened. "In my experience, innocent people don't quote constitutional law during routine encounters." He said it like he'd just caught her in a lie. The logic was backwards, but he didn't know it. "Sounds like someone who's been through this before." That's when he reached for his cuffs. "Hands behind your back. You're under arrest for suspicious activity and failure to cooperate." Samantha felt the situation tipping into a runaway failure. she said with a calm authority that should have made any reasonable supervisor pause. I strongly advise you verify my identity before doing something irreversible. Coleman interpreted that as a bluff. Turn around, now. Miranda rights rolled out like a script, and a crowd swelled, phones out like a field of metallic flowers catching the sun. Samantha made the call in her head. Operational security was already trashed by this public scene. If she didn't reveal now, not only would she be hauled in, but the target might walk. Wait, she said quietly. I need to make one call. You can call from the station, Coleman snapped, lunging to grab her wrist as she reached for her phone. The cuffs clicked, cold steel biting her skin as he pinned her to the sun-heated hood. Tyler announced the arrest again, like a trophy. Samantha kept her voice level, but her mind was moving fast: risk, cost, timing. Coleman had only fully secured one wrist and was adjusting the second when Samantha slid her secure phone free and hit speed dial before Tyler could snatch it. Put that phone down, Tyler barked, but it was too late. The line rang once. Then a crisp, unmistakably federal voice filled the speaker. Special Agent in Charge Anderson, FBI Atlanta Field Office. Time slowed in that way it does when a wrong assumption finally meets a hard fact. Tyler froze mid-reach. Jason's citation book slipped from his hands, papers scattering onto concrete like a blown-up plan. Coleman's grip loosened a fraction, uncertainty flickering for the first time. Samantha spoke clearly, each word a clean signal. Agent Samantha Brooks, badge 4751. I'm being arrested by Atlanta PD officers near the federal courthouse. I need immediate intervention. You are compromising an active federal operation. You could feel the air change. Bystanders leaned in. Phones zoomed. The officers looked like men hit by a wave they didn't know was coming. Anderson's voice boomed through the speaker. Coleman stammered, trying to keep dignity as his career cracked. Anderson didn't let him hide behind it. You are interfering with a federal surveillance operation on a multi-agency financial crimes case. Your actions may have compromised months of work and endangered my team. Remove those cuffs. Now. The crowd murmured, recognizing they were watching something rare. Local law enforcement caught red-handed in bias and overreach by the simple reality of federal authority. Coleman unlocked the cuffs with trembling fingers. Samantha rubbed her wrists. Calm on the outside, already logging details for the report that would follow. Agent Brooks, are you injured? Anderson asked. I'm uninjured, she replied, mission-focused to the core. But the suspects may have been alerted by this public confrontation. That's when Captain Marcus Stevens arrived, urgent and pale, the posture of a man walking into a disaster he hadn't designed. What happened? He demanded, then heard Anderson's voice still on speaker, and his stomach dropped. Samantha explained cleanly. Refusal to verify credentials, escalation without cause, wrongful arrest during federal surveillance. Stevens apologized, but Samantha cut to the engineering reality of it. Captain, this isn't about apologies. Your officer's assumptions may have cost us months of investigative progress. These suspects monitor law enforcement activity. Anderson added the scope money laundering across 4 states, millions in transactions. Tyler looked at the ground like he wanted it to swallow him. He tried to stop a suspicious subject and might have helped real criminals escape because he couldn't see past a biased model. Internal Affairs was called immediately. Field authority was suspended. Coleman was reassigned. Jason was desk pending training. Stevens addressed the crowd, acknowledging training failures and committing to reforms, because with viral footage spreading, there was no other viable path. Samantha didn't gloat.